This will be online learning for Carmel High School data lesson number 1, and now I'm actually going to start like the meat and potatoes of our note sheet, which is going to be for today's lesson, population and sample. So take a look at your notes. I have mine right here. I'm going to start in the notebook on page 108. Now for this unit, we're going to learn a lot of new vocabulary, and so this would be really important that you fill this out or you take notes on your own in a spiral notebook or something so that you can refer back to these. And I'll be saying these words over and over, so it might be a good idea to practice. The first vocabulary word is going to be the word population. And a population is a large group for which data can be applied. And then what we're going to do is look at a small portion of the population, and that's called a sample. Usually we take samples because populations are too big to survey everybody, and so a sampling is part of that group. A random is our next vocab word. A random sample would be selecting people so that it is representative of the entire population, and kind of the key to random is that you would choose people without any preference. There are several ways to pick a random sample, and I'll talk about those next. Our last new vocab word for this unit is going to be the word bias. A bias happens when somehow you are favoring a group over the other. So what happens is they say some element of the population has no chance of selection. And I think you know what bias is, just like you know if teachers are biased towards boys or girls, seniors or freshmen. I think you kind of know what that word means. Now down below it says examples here. As you read the example, we're going to talk about what is the population and then what is the element of randomness if it's there. It says the DECA Club is trying to decide what flavor of Frappuccino to offer at the cafe. They select 5 SRT classes from each grade level to survey. So if they are wanting to know what students like, I would say the population for this, the entire group of people that we want to know about, would be all Carmel High School students. Is this sample randomly enough? Would this be a way to have choosing without any preference? It doesn't look like there was any preference given, so I would call this a random sample. The next example says that at Kings Island wants to put in a new attraction. They ask only people exiting the roller coaster what type of new attraction they would like to see at the park. So if they're looking at asking people exiting the roller coasters, I would say all that you can know about is roller coaster riders. They didn't ask people at the cafe, they didn't ask people, on some of the water rides, they asked people exiting the roller coaster rides, so that's all we can talk about. And I would say this is not random because a theme park would have more than just roller coasters. They would have other types of things, and so they shouldn't have only asked roller coaster riders. So I would say there would be a bias towards roller coaster riders. All right, on to the next page, page 109, ways to collect data. So the vocabulary is now on the left side, and I'll talk about what each of those means. One way of collecting data would be a survey, and I kind of think of this as just asking questions. You probably get some type of survey all the time in your email, but this would be asking questions of a group of people, and then you basically record the results. Data would be responses given by a sample of the population. Now, to make a conclusion about your survey, all you would really need to do is make some sort of generalization about the population. So here's an example of a survey and asking questions. As a teacher, I could ask students in my class if they felt like an extra review would help before a test. An observational study, this would be if you observe I kind of think of watch. So if you were to watch naturally occurring events and record the results, data is then recorded after just observing or watching. And we would do this to compare reactions, and then again to draw a conclusion about responses of the population. So the difference between a survey and just observing, okay, so using the same sort of scenario about extra review and to prepare for a test. This would be if I actually set out an extra review. And I'll just observe who takes it to study. And then I'll compare the results of the kids who took the review and didn't. All right, the last new vocab word would be experiment. I don't know that I'd say necessarily that's a brand new vocab word, but an experiment would be to impose some sort of treatment. It's kind of, in my opinion, something that's deliberately done to change results. So what you would want to do is when you conduct an experiment, you would need to record your results. And again, this would be to make a conclusion about a population. So thinking about the same two examples that I have about studying for a test, if I'm going to do an experiment, I would assign half my students an extra review and the other half no extra review. And then I would compare results. All right, the next page, types of sampling. So how are you going to collect your data? Simple random sample, stratified, and systematic. I'll talk about those three. Simple random samples would be samples that are equally likely to be chosen. Stratified would be best explained with this. Your population would first be divided into subgroups. And then you randomly sample from each group. And then systematic would be based on a sort of system on a specific time or interval. These three are written out examples of each of those. So simple random sample, you would just assign random numbers to a class, say of 26 students, and then you randomly assign a couple people for something. Stratified would be kind of like what we have here with freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. So there are already subgroups in our high school, and you randomly select an equal amount from each group. Systematic would be very different. If every 2 minutes you stop whoever comes in the door and you ask them your survey question, or maybe every 20th item on an assembly line that you pull it. So these would be the ways to collect data, and they are good ways of collecting data because they use some sort of randomness. All right, biased samples. This is on page 111. For biased samples, you're going to have some sort of favoritism be represented. And what happens is this will lead to misleading results. Bias can occur in the way the sample is selected. And what you're trying to do is not favor one group over another, because unbiased ways of collecting data use random. And I already taught you 3 ways to utilize randomness, and that would be a simple random sample, a stratified, or systematic. Now, there's a couple examples written on this page. I'm on page 111 in the book, and it has 4 examples here, A, B, C, D. What we're going to do is read it and decide if it's biased or not. And it says here for number 1, every 1,000th bowl is pulled from the production line and measured for length. I would consider this unbiased because it follows that systematic sampling method. Letter B, every 10th customer in line for a certain rock band concert tickets is asked about his or her favorite rock band. Even though you're using this systematic result, you're looking at a specific rock band concert and then asking them their favorite rock band. So I would say there's bias there because you're already at a rock concert asking who's your favorite rock concert. Letter C here, the student council surveys the students in one classroom to decide the theme for the spring dance. One classroom I don't think would be enough to get an entire school's idea for a theme for a dance, so I would say there's some bias here. Think about the difference between a class like, I don't know, AP Calculus or a freshman gym class. I would gather you'd probably get some different results there. Letter D, the Parent Association surveys the parents of every 5th student on the school roster to decide whether to hold a fundraiser. I would say this would be unbiased. It's all the parents, they just survey every 5th one. I think that would be a great way. Now the last couple examples on the page, what we're going to look for is identifying the bias. Now again, bias can occur in the way the data is collected. So not just your method, but how do you actually collect the data? So for letter A here, it says, the question, should the government require citizens to participate in recycling efforts? Do you think in the way they're asking this question that would give an unbiased result? Well, I think this is a pretty okay way to ask this question. I don't think it's hinting the person to say one way or another, so I'm going to go with unbiased. And then I'll read this next question to show you why I think that was a good one. Letter B says, due to diminishing resources, should a law be made to require recycling? I feel like there's guiding towards, oh yeah, we should require recycling because we're diminishing resources. There's definitely a persuasion in the way that the question is worded, so I'm going to go biased here. So this is a good example of great wording for a question and very poor wording for a question. Letter C, the budget of River Valley School District is short on funds. Should taxes be raised in order for the district to fund extracurricular sport programs? Well, if we say sport programs, I think this would be biased. They're short on funds. Should we do this for specifically sport programs? I think that would be kind of a biased way. And then the next question here, letter D, should taxes be raised in order for the district to fund extracurricular sport programs? I think this would be a better way of asking that question. All right, now you can go ahead and pause the video and then try the practice pages. I'm not going to do the video on the practice pages. You can go ahead and try them yourself. They start on page 112 and go all the way to page 117. Go ahead and check the notebook key to see how you did, and then don't forget to check out the 5 or 6 question, I think, kind of exit ticket for the e-learning day, lesson 1 on data. Thanks so much, guys.